What is going on, guys? This is going to be a completely different video. You have probably never seen this before, and if you have, well, you know what, watch it again. We have a giant piece of 1-inch thick insulating foam that we got from Home Depot. We have a Fosse Audio little tiny Bluetooth 100-watt amplifier, and we have two neat little devices called exciters. So what are we doing, you might ask? Well, we're building speakers, and we're building speakers out of insulation foam from Home Depot. Now, just a little bit of background on this. You may have seen videos. There was a channel called Tech Ingredients that did a video on, basically making these and tuning them and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. But I want to let you guys know that this is nothing new. This is something that I was playing with back in the 90s when I was in high school. This is something that, we took a sheet of plywood, we strapped a transducer to it, and we made a giant speaker out of a 4x8 sheet of plywood. This theory has been around for years and years and years. And back in the early 1900s, when audio first started to get really popular, with the ability to reproduce audio and record audio and everything like that, they used to manufacture what were called free air speakers, meaning that you had to have a very large surface that stood in free air, no enclosure, no box, no nothing, and the transducer that was slapped to the back of it was nothing more than a vibration transducer. And what that does is it transmits the vibrations from the audio to a much larger surface. Then over time, things changed a little bit. They wanted to try to fit drivers into smaller and smaller enclosures so that you didn't have to have an entire wall of speakers to get the sound you were looking for. All you needed was a couple of small boxes with a couple of drivers in it, and you were good to go. So one of the things that we're going to do today is technically going back to the old school and making a speaker that is literally nothing more than a mechanical transducer. And by transducer, I mean that it is something that transmits its vibration to whatever it's stuck to. So these are made by a company, and I'll put all the links for all this stuff in the description, but these are made by a company in China by the name of Dayton Audio. And literally all it is, let me come around and I'll show you guys. Literally all it is a little transducer that has some 3M adhesive on the back of it. That's what it looks like. These are the 4-ohm 40 watters. All these little adhesive patches are going to stick right here, boop, to our foam board, and we're going to make a speaker out of it. So the first thing we're going to do is we got to figure out what size we want to make these speakers. Now for me, what I plan on doing is, if you watch the Tech Ingredients video, which I'll also link in the description because it's super interesting, there's different sizes you can make. Now we're going for audio reproduction, not necessarily bass reproduction. Because of the nature of how this stuff works and how these transducers work, in order to get a good bass reproduction, we're going to need a very large speaker to move a very large amount of air, considering that we're not compressing said air in a speaker box and then releasing it. So today we're not going to be focusing on bass reproduction. We might do that in the future, and that's why we bought such a large piece of foam. What we're going to start with are two 2-foot by 2-foot speakers. We're going to try those out, see how they work, and if they don't have enough bass reproduction for what I'm looking for, we're going to go with a 2x4 section, two of those with two more transducers, and that'll give us a little bit more surface area and therefore a little bit more bass. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and cut these up into 2-foot by 2-foot sections, and I'll bring you guys back and I'll show you exactly how we're going to prepare those 2-foot by 2-foot sections before we stick our actuators on. Okay, so thankfully this nice level that I have has a measuring stick on it. So we can measure down 2 feet which is roughly 51 centimeters, or I'm sorry, 61 centimeters roughly. And we can kind of connect our lines here, and it helps to have a nice long straight edge. Now guys, remember, this is a very simple, non-scientific setup here. So we're not expecting amazing results. We're just trying to do something cool. So now we're going to go ahead and cut this 2-foot section. And this stuff is relatively easy to cut. You just want to go slowly so you don't kind of, you know, go off your line too much. I usually like to cut about halfway through it. Listen to me, I'm talking like I use this stuff every day. I'm not. But you just want to be kind of careful. You don't want to cut yourself, nor do you want any sort of weird jagged edges on this, because it will affect the sound. So now we'll go ahead and cut the other side. All right, now we can cut down further through, hopefully all the way. That half a line that we cut will kind of give us a little bit of a guide to go by here. Okay, now we should just be able to kind of score this and snap it. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so now that we got that, we got lucky here because this stuff is actually scored, pre-scored from the get-go, so that it's easier to cut and match. So we're just going to cut it right down the score line. Again, we'll pop it apart, and there we go. There's our 2-foot by 2-foot sections. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to create radiused edges on these. And that's just going to help to kind of diffuse some of the harshness of the sound, because when this vibrates, if you could see the sound waves coming off of this, you would see that in these corners there's going to be a very pronounced audio wave that comes off of that that's not real clean, and it's kind of sharp, and it's not really the greatest thing. So what we're going to do is take this funnel, which has about a 7.5-inch diameter, and ideally what we want is about a 4-inch radius. And unfortunately I don't have any 8-inch round anything at this time, so we're going to use this funnel, and you just basically set it up to both edges and then make a mark. And we're going to do that on all 4 corners. And this is actually a pretty easy section of the process, and it's going to help to kind of mellow the weird stuff you get off of it. And you'll see later on, if we decide to build some more bass responsive panels, that we're going to end up leaving them straight and not radiusing the corners, because you do get a little bit better of a sound off of the corners when you're trying to create low frequencies. But for this, with high frequencies, you can get a very sharp resonance that's just gnarly. And if you guys don't know, or if I've never mentioned it in a video, I think I did a video a while back on the audio build in my X5, a little bit of an audiophile. I love audio. I love electronics. Kind of a nerdy thing that I got going on, so we're doing something a little fun today. Getting away from the rusty Jeeps for a day and doing this. But now that we have all of our corners radiused, we can just take our knife and go through and cut all these. Okay, now that we got the corners cut, we're gonna take these over to the disc sander and make them actually look better and round. So, okay, so we're at the disc sander and we're gonna clean these puppies up. And again, guys, we're not going for, you know, absolutely perfect or like blow your mind audiophile sound, but closest we can get to having nice edges, the better it's gonna sound. Now, mind you, this is, you know, literally $19 worth of foam. So $19 worth of foam, I think 20 something dollars worth of actuators, and 60 bucks in an amplifier. So we're not getting studio quality sound here, but sorry to my headphone users. Alrighty, well, that looks pretty good thus far. Okay, now, so for mounting these things, make sure we got audio, we do. Mounting them is something that you really need to take into consideration, because this whole piece needs to vibrate freely. So we can't mount this solidly to anything. We're going to have to suspend it. So the easiest way to suspend this stuff is what I found to be cotter pins. I don't know how well you guys can see that, but cotter pin has a nice loop to it, and literally all I do is push them in with a little bit of super glue. So what we're gonna do is we'll measure over, let's just say 2.5 inches, and then we'll push the pin down while twisting it, which will give us a little bit of a cavity to work with. And then we'll take some super glue. We'll kind of flow it down in the hole and on the pin. If the super glue ever decides to come out, it'll be good. Just put a dab in there. Then we'll stick that down in there. Give it a push. And when that glue dries, we will have the perfect solution to hang our panels. So now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. We'll go, yeah, we're going about 2.5 inches from the end of the curve. So right about there. And again, give it a twist just to kind of make a spot for it to go. This foam is super, super dense, but it's also very soft. So it doesn't take much to pierce down through it. So again, we'll get some of our super glue on there. If it'll come out of the tube. All right, there we go. Do a little drop in there. Try to match the height too as best you can. I mean, you could obviously mess around with it with whatever you use, string or whatever you're using to hang it, but it's always good to kind of get it to where you need it first. These things aren't going to be very heavy when they're done, so. All right, we got that one done. Now we'll do the next one. Alrighty, so those are done. You can see kind of a little close up how those fit in there. They fit in there pretty good. I don't know if you could see them all that well, but not too bad. So we're going to go ahead and let this cure up. And then we'll be back to stick the actuators to it. Okay, so placement of the drivers or the exciters or the transducers or the actuators or whatever you want to call them is pretty important when it comes to this stuff. Now, one of the big problems that you're going to run into with placing your drivers is that with sound like this, you're going to end up with some really strange resonant frequencies. Just due to the fact that there's no tuning involved. There's no box tuning, there's no box size, there's no woofer cone tuning, there's none of that. You're working with a dead flat surface. Now that dead flat surface is obviously going to have some resonant peaks, and it's also going to have some peaks where there are basically no audio because it's going to cancel out. So what we're going to be looking at, number one, is turning our phone off, because every time I'm filming, that's all that does. And we're going to be placing these actuators on these panels in different positions. Now you can see I marked out one here and one here. So the panel on your right is dead center. We're going to be mounting this actuator just like this, dead center in the middle of the panel. The next one is going to be mounted 2/5 of the way in and 3/5 of the way down. So it's offset just a hair. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow for a different type of propagation of the audio frequencies. And by doing that, we're going to get a good combination of both. So we're going to end up getting some loss on this one and some loss on this one, but the loss we get over here will be made up here, and the loss we get here will be made up here. So it's just something that's been figured out over the years of messing with speakers like this, that will give us, you know, the best possible results for the cheapest price. Now, mind you guys, I have to let you know that total cost-wise, we're into this for about 150 bucks. That includes the two actuators, all the foam, which we have plenty of it here, and the amplifier. So 150 bucks is less than a cheap set of speakers. So we'll see how this all sounds. But what we're going to do now is we're going to peel the VHB tape off of these. We're going to face our wires downwards because that's where we want them to go. And we're going to stick them on. So these actuators are nice because they have these little fingers that come out. These are supposed to be a little bit better when it comes to low frequency response, which we're going to need every little bit of that we can get. Because again, we don't have a very large surface area here. So frequency response is going to be a delicate situation. All right, so now we're going to mount this one dead center. Stick that down. Do the same with this one. And this one will go at the 3/5, 2/5. Give that a good push. Now in some of the videos that you see, they'll have you like sanding things down and doing all that other crap, but you know what? Ain't nobody got time for that. So what I'm gonna do now is going to use a little bit of string. And I literally just bought some mildew and rot resistant twisted mason line at Home Depot for $3. And we're just gonna use that to hang these things. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. That's kind of a boring part. I'm gonna hang it, I'm gonna wire it, we're gonna hook up the amplifier, and we're gonna see how our new speakers work. So, pretty simple process, but let's get it all wired up and see how it sounds. All right, so huge nerd moment. Now, when I did this stuff back in high school, it was, we were messing around with it, we were playing around with it. The transducers were basically just piezoelectric garbage, and you couldn't get any kind of decent sound out of it other than if you wanted to scream and yell, because at certain peaks it would just scream and everything else. But I'm going to turn around and I'm going to play this music for you. You're hearing it from the microphone that's right in front of me here. Listen to this. Now, I don't know how that's gonna come through on the video, but the sheer quality and crispness of this is unbelievable. It's literally like $3 worth of foam and $20 or $30 worth of actuators and a small little Bluetooth amp, a little 100-watt amp. I'm literally blowing my own mind at this point, which half of you guys probably like, this guy's crazy, but this stuff is cool. I mean, we can definitely hear there's some peakiness to it, but I don't know if you'll be able to hear it. Like certain frequencies are very pronounced and others are very muted, but they're doing a good job. I can hear the different frequencies from the different panels because of where we placed everything. You can kind of hear that little snap sound is very, very pronounced. That's one of the peaks that I was talking about in the other half of this video, is that you get that peakiness of certain frequencies because of the way these panels are set up. I wish I could play some like normal music for you guys so you get an idea what it sounds like with popular music, but this whole video will get demonetized if we do that, but just listen to this for a second.
Chevy 12 computers now have primary control of critical vehicle functions.
And the cool part about it is that for some reason, we've got halfway decent low end response. I mean, it's not a bass machine, but I can definitely hear the low end. And I don't know if that's because they're hanging in free air and they're not directly up against a wall or up against a surface, but it's insane. It sounds incredible. It sounds absolutely incredible. And the cool part about all this is that it fills this entire 1,500 square foot shop with no issue whatsoever. I'm probably really annoying the girl next door at this point, but this is unreal. This is absolutely unreal to me. So we're gonna have to revisit this and we're gonna have to make more of these And we're gonna have to make some more low-end stuff and see if we can get some really good bass response out of it. Maybe we'll get a 4-channel amplifier and do a few other odds and ends, but this stuff is cool. So I'm gonna link you to everything that I used. You can literally buy this stuff for 150 bucks complete. Hook your phone up to it via Bluetooth and bam, you've got music coming out of it. But it's gnarly. The one last thing I wanna play for you guys before we go is some nature sounds. And I hope, I'm gonna try to play like less than 10 seconds of this. I'm hoping that we don't get nailed for it. It's mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing. And yeah, I'm nerding out big time on this one. So if you guys like that kind of stuff, then cool. If you don't, try it for yourself. You're gonna become a nerd very, very fast. So that's it for this video. We're going to elaborate on this setup a little bit more. We're gonna hang some things different. We're gonna do a few other odds and ends because this is cool. This is super cool. And I hope you guys enjoyed this one. It was quite a bit different from what we normally do, but had an idea, wanted to try something. It worked out perfectly. So I'll see you all on the next one. Have a great night. Okay, one more thing before we go. Let's see if I can show you guys how well these things vibrate. All right, I don't know if you can see that, but pretty cool.